card for a parking problem.
And 4 in your 23.
Yeah, that's 4, I'll get a 28 from one truck when you're ready.
Go ahead.
From one truck, White Lincoln X-ray 985, should come back up heading.
So you had 2000. Patrick's faulting.
10-4, if you can just put a little note in something like that, I'm going to be leaving a note on his vehicle so they can remove it.
Fuck. Fuck. Rockingham 505. 505 enter vandalism case for Athens. Explain it. Soon to be X. Slash her tires and has made threatening comments to her. She's concerned he might return.
Yeah, forgive this at 32.
10-4. You're assigned to a vandalism case in Athens. Did you copy the 505?
Yeah, 4.
21.
No, 3 in Depot Street. Truck boy entry 5.
7435.
10-4.
10-4.
Can you go 43 again?
143.
You go with that 43 you had. I didn't hear any, but I had just looks like we do.
10-4. I just wanted to know if you should be put back 76 to Cabana Circle or to the subject's address.
Yeah, I'll be 23 back on that town property case, and I'll be 76 to the Williams Road address to see if I can find the owner.
10-4. 449 1120.
Now 449 1121, thank you.
10-4.
Code 4. 4.
Rockingham 535.
Yeah, that's great college.
535.
You and me, you guys know if our woman who fucked into a house. I'll slide up that way.
Caller is now been able to close the front door. He's now pounding on the door, trying to get in now. About 5 foot, long dark hair, got tie-dye shirt on, and number 21 is over.
We have separation. In or out. She's ready. Hey guys, happy Thanksgiving. Just a quick impromptu here. And this is the sound of what kind of show I want it to be. Just everybody sit back and relax and have a little fun. This is a family day or, whatever it takes to, I don't know if there's any good games on tonight, but tomorrow everybody's kind of resting to get ready for tomorrow. I've never actually had this beer, Carlsberg. I think it might even be made by Anheuser-Busch. I don't know, but I wanted to try it. It's a Pilsner. I like Pilsner beers. Let me take a sip and report to you how it is. Oh, wow. That is really good, actually. That is really, really good. So happy Thanksgiving, guys. It's really good to see you. This will be a show. We're going to go over a few different things, but I want to say thank you, obviously, as that's a big part of the theme here, to everybody that's contributed over the last year. Most importantly, here in chat, the great community that we've had with Tom Fleming, and now Joe is another moderator. They do a great job, but also anybody that's contributed in any way over the last year with information or people that have come on the show, like Karen McCormick or Kevin Mahoney or many, many other people. Yes, getting a message. Yes, drinking tonight. So one of the things that I want to talk about now, this is, maybe you'll indulge me just for a moment on this, because this is really more for me than for you. And I've talked about this kind of thing before on the show, but because of the issues that we're dealing with here, when you're reporting things that affect real people, I guess now I'm a journalist, right? I never went to journalism school, never wanted to be a journalist, but I'm reporting things that affect real people, their views on things or real human beings. So I want to and do quite a bit of looking in the mirror as we go, learning from mistakes. And mistakes are part of it, but trying to continue to grow. And so no, there's not some mistake that has been revealed that I'm gonna confess to today. No, this is just something I want to do regularly, is to always take a look at myself and make sure that what I'm doing is most importantly that it's accurate, that I'm giving people information that they can rely on, that it's been double checked, or it's come from a source that I really trust, or there's, when possible, I can show receipts, those kind of things. I want people to feel that I'm doing my best to make sure that something that I report is actually accurate. Nobody's going to be perfect on that. But if you make a mistake, you want to correct it loudly and quickly, and as much as necessary, depending on the level of mistake that you make. But I also want to be fair. When you're looking at these issues, you want to be fair to everybody involved, whatever side of an argument they may be on, or whatever you may think of them personally. You want to try to be fair. Another thing, thank you very much, Carrie. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you too. So there's different things that go into self-reflection, right? One of the things I think is, especially if you're doing something like this as a content creator, you want to always be looking to make sure that you're not allowing self-interest to skew your judgment about what needs to be reported. Okay, and this will come up a little bit when we talk about Grant's post today. But you want to make sure, for instance, are you putting something out there quickly so you can say you're the first to put it out, or you can be that breaking news kind of thing? You're Scoop Jackson, right? Because there is a temptation to do that, right? If you get a really good piece of information, there's a temptation to want to be the hero and get that out there, right? And it's human. It's every reporter, I think, is going to have that. And so I want to always be looking in the mirror to make sure I'm not doing that. Make sure, because it's easy to think your mind can play tricks on you where you convince yourself that you're doing the right thing, that you're doing something righteous, when in reality, you're just doing something selfish. And so you have to always be looking at that, So if I report something, it's not enough to just say, well, there's interest in that story. No, you have to be looking at saying, is it right to be putting this out there? Is it fair? Is it in everybody's best interest? I think there's a lot of that stuff that you have to look at. Another thing that I want to do is also regularly, am I being too judgmental when I'm looking at certain people, right? Because none of us is perfect. And you don't want to go down that path of thinking you're high and mighty on one spot and they're scum of the earth or something like that. Just be, it's not that we shouldn't be judgmental. Because look, if anybody that's following this case, we know there are things that are done that are really, really, it would be appropriate to call them evil. So judgment is important. We need to allow ourselves to judge that stuff. If people are doing things that are wrong, that are harming other people, we need to be able to judge that. Now, there's different ways to judge it. You may judge the action and not the person. But if someone is regularly doing that kind of thing, I don't think it's unfair. And it's not only is it not unfair to judge that person, it's necessary. But when you get in the game of judgments, you really have to be careful because, there's the old Bible thing, let he who cast the first stone and stuff like that. Just the idea is be very, very careful when you walk into doing something like that. And that's something I'm just talking about myself. I'm not telling anybody else what to do. But see, for me, when I say this, it's one thing to just say it to myself, but to say it to you people really adds a lot of substance to it. So you're indulging me in listening to this, but so thank you. I very much, that's just one more thing to thank you for. So I appreciate it. But when I say it with you guys, it's almost like putting it in writing. And it really reinforces my need to make sure I do all of those things. And so I'm just going to have to regularly get on the air and talk about this kind of thing. So I also want to address the pink elephant in the room. And again, with humanity and generosity, because we've all been there in some ways, right? In some ways not. But so a lot of the pink shirts right now that put in an incredible amount of their energy, their heart, their souls, giving up time at work over the last year and a half, were shunned at that fundraiser. Now, I'm not trying to create division in their ranks. I promise you, I'm not doing that. You don't need me to do that. Why would you care about that? So what I'm saying to them, if any of them happen to tune in, is there are ways to keep together what you have without flipping. Obviously, it would be easy for me to say, oh, why don't you turn on Karen now? That would be cheap. I'm not going to do that. What I'm saying is you got something out of what you were doing that was maybe separate from Karen. The cohesiveness that you felt. I met a lot of you people in Dedham in April. And the ones that I met were all very nice and generous to me. And we got along. And it was me with a bunch of pink shirt people, really no one else. But you were nice to me, and I was happy to talk to you, and I enjoyed talking to you. Now, things got even a little bit more hostile as the summer went by, so you probably might not feel the same, might not treat me the same way if I was to go into that room now. Hopefully not, but who knows? But I knew that most of you were at heart decent people. You weren't. There was no bad intention in your hearts. And so what you could do here is not flip. I'm not saying you should flip to the other side. You could keep this together and just choose another cause, right? There's other issues out there particularly related to justice. I'm not going to tell you which ones. You'll find your own. But maybe you have a way to do that and keep your group together, especially the small units that were there in Dedham at Court TV. But in the early days of the protesting or in the rainy days when there aren't a lot of people there, that they were still out there. when they were outside the buffer zone, obeying the buffer zone, those kind of things. Maybe look at that. There are ways you could find other things that you believe in and that you can still do some of that stuff to keep your groups together. I think that's a way to maybe overcome some of the loss that you're feeling now. And look, inevitably, this trial is going to be over. So you were going to face this moment no matter what happens, no matter what the verdict is. At some point, the Free Karen Read thing had to end. And if you were going to keep that group together, you're going to have to move on to other causes. Well, maybe now's the time to do that. But I do think that you should consider engaging in what I just did, a little bit of soul searching, a little of looking inside the mirror. Thank you, GA Mom. I appreciate it. I'm not sure if GA is Georgia. That would be cool. I think she is from Georgia. Excellent. This is the one state I think that we haven't seen represented here yet, but we do have a lot from down south, like Hillbilly Nitro in Tennessee. Obviously Tom Fleming's in North Carolina. So excellent from Georgia. I'll tell a Georgia story in a little bit. Well, not my first time leaving New England. We drove down to Florida for spring break. This was a long time ago, guys. This was at the heyday of spring break in Fort Lauderdale. Oh, Texas. Excellent. And we had been driving all night and we stopped in Georgia like at 6:30 in the morning to go to McDonald's. Boy, we lingered in that McDonald's for like 2 hours because it was weird. It was like in the middle of nowhere, and we were all guys in the car, and every person that worked at that McDonald's was a beautiful, beautiful blonde woman. Every single one of them. Now, I guess for me, I'd prefer brunettes, but I don't even really care. I like them both. But it was fantastic. Maybe we dreamt it all. I don't know. Maybe we were just so tired. But anyways, the blue shirt, yeah. But back to the pink shirt. I don't know what to call them because it's not the Pink Army anymore. We're talking about the core group here, right? You should maybe consider looking in the mirror a little bit yourself and just apply some of your own, the standards that you maybe had about this, about how you conduct yourself before the Free Karen Read cause, and just do a little soul searching and decide if everything that you've been a part of is really how you want to conduct yourself. I'm not talking about most of it's been good and stuff like that, just going out there and peacefully protesting. But some of the things, maybe you can consider a little bit of self-reflection. We all have to do it from time to time. Maybe take a look if you didn't possibly allow the desire, the strength that you felt in this cause, if that didn't result in you maybe dismissing evidence that you shouldn't have. I mean, really good evidence in this case that you just sometimes outright dismiss because you don't like it. So again, as I said with myself, I want to be able to look back and say, am I doing what I'm doing? Is the motivation really pure, or is there something selfish there? And it can be hard to determine that stuff, but you have to look deeply at yourself, because I do see a lot of dismissal of evidence on that side. And I've seen it when I talk to them in person, and I've seen it when I encounter them in online interviews. I've seen it with Nick on Court TV, and Nick did an outstanding job last night. He's become extremely competent at what he does, and he's much better at Turtle Boy. And he's not a fill-in for Turtle Boy on Court TV. Turtle Boy could never do what Nick does. Nick is really good at what he does. But I have seen times when I give a piece of evidence that explains something, and there's kind of a look on his face like, wow, you can tell he hasn't heard it before, which is really odd, because most of the time, I mean, maybe we'll do a little bit of that here too. We'll do a little A to Z debunking on this, but these things were explained, or there is an explanation for it that's pretty common sense, but they're so in their bubble there that they don't see it. I saw that look on Nurse Kim's face when I went on her show a lot. And so, for instance, when I gave them an explanation for why Karen's Lexus was towed to the Sally port, she just kind of had this look on her face like, holy wow, I never heard of this thing. I never heard of this explanation. But then she just went on to dismiss all those explanations anyways. And so that's what I'm saying, because you have to be self-reflective and say, am I letting some other thing that's truly selfish get in the way of pursuing the truth and analyzing it honestly? Those are things that we all have to do in life. And I'm finding that a little bit lacking on that side, or a lot lacking on that side. And it's a problem. But now is an occasion, now that you've maybe realized that this person who you've had on a pedestal for a long time really shouldn't be. She didn't care about you. And that doesn't mean that she's guilty. That doesn't mean you were wrong, but she didn't care about you. And maybe because you had her on a pedestal for so long, you stopped actually looking at the real evidence. Just ask yourself that question. Just look in the mirror and ask yourself if that's possible. And I don't mean just ask it and come up with a quick answer, because that's a hard answer. So you're not going to be able to come up with a quick answer, but you're going to have to do it. Repeat. It's a process. We are finding, what I have found over the last year is that when people begin asking the hard questions and seeking the answers, that what happens is they do usually end up coming around to a different way of looking at things, but it is a process. It might take a month. It might take 3 months, you know? Hold on one second. This is, you got to be so careful with this ban thing, because the chat thing moves and then you accidentally ban someone that you don't want to. So, but clearly, Tom's busy because he's not only being this guy up here is not only being an asshole, but is clearly violating the rules on caps. All right. Where were we, guys? Oh yeah, I forgot. So usually when you set up the show, I can do this real quick. I'm gonna do this. Give me a moment, guys. I am going to change the settings so that it doesn't automatically do this. You have to do it. Give me 1 second, so that only subscribers can comment. Done. All right. So if you want to come into chat now and stir things up, you got to at least subscribe, which seems to be a barrier that people don't want to cross for some reason, even though you could just subscribe and then unsubscribe. But these guys aren't too smart, a lot of them. So let me just take a quick sip. This is a really good beer. All right. So where were we? I think we were talking about having a little self-reflection when it comes to this case. All right. So along those lines, Grant posted what turned out to be Facebook messages today, but as is usual, he misinterprets them. And because he has an agenda and he's not a careful, deliberative person. This is the thing with Grant is I first became aware of Grant last January when he was covering the Aiden Kearney stuff. Aiden had just been arrested, and then he'd been arrested in October, but then they got him again on when he went down to try to shake down Lindsay to find out what her communications were. And so that was a violation of his bail. And so he did, I think it was 30 days. But while that was going on, there was a lot of hearings and stuff. And Grant was tweeting on him from court. So that was, and especially some of these things were some of these things were not, there were no cameras there. So the only thing that we were getting was kind of Grant's tweets. So I invited him on the show. And at that time, he said, I really don't follow the Karen Reed case and don't know anything about it. This was this past January. But over the next few weeks, sensing opportunity, he did start covering the Karen Reed case. And in a way that only Grant can, he thought that he was the guy. He listen, there are some mental health issues there, but he thinks he has superpowers and he can see into someone's heart, and that his intellect is so far higher than anybody else's that as soon as he begins looking into it, he somehow understands it. That's fine. That all can be entertaining and stuff. But what he started doing was tweeting stuff every day that we knew was not true, whether it was about Aiden or about Karen Reed. It just was stuff that wasn't true. And even though he was more or less on, I'm not on his side, but if you would say he's on the same side as us, I couldn't have him on the show anymore because the stuff he was reporting, there was big stuff in it every day that was false. And so we stopped having him on the show. And I had him on one more time. And this was during, we did a segment at the beginning of, right before the trial, called Opening Arguments. And so where everybody got to try out their opening arguments. And he did a good job on that. But it was a problem. He's saying strange things all the time. And he's now, because he was interested in Lindsay romantically and she didn't share that, and he has an obsessive side. And so eventually she had to push him away. He blames that on Kate. So now he doesn't ever put a post out that doesn't involve Kate. Kate is in every single post, and as is Lindsay. And so now and I only bring this up because he's also wrapped me into this too. He has this idea that Kate is part of some cabal with the state police that's secretly manipulating everything and manufacturing everything. I can only tell you, if it's a cabal, I'm not part of it. He always says I am. And so if it's a cabal, because I'm not part of it, I wouldn't know about it. But it doesn't pass the logic test that the state police is secretly run by Kate Peter. It's insane. All right. So what he posted today, now I have said every single time the same exact thing on this subject, that I spoke to Brian Tully, Lieutenant Brian Tully, the head of the Norfolk County Detectives Unit, once. I'll repeat it again. And actually, because of these texts, I can even give you the date, because I had to go back and research it. And I did make one mistake on what I've told you guys. Now correct it. So I have been getting, over the course of this time, threats from different types of people, and just don't generally care. One of them was Steve Coate, and so I mistakenly thought that I had called Tully over Steve Cody threats, but that's wrong. It was not Steve Cody. It was somebody else. The guy's last name was Zee. And I think is his real name, and it's a real person, but he kind of disappeared. So I forgot about him, but he did send a threat to me. He had sent a series of threats, which I initially ignored, but then he sent a threat that seemed a little bit specific, and again, I still would have ignored it. But then I found out that he also sent a threat to Elizabeth Proctor. I did not find this out from Elizabeth Proctor. Okay. So, but just found out through the grapevine. And so I decided, he's threatening a woman. He's threatening a trooper's wife. And I had no contact with the troopers at all. But I figured this is a line. This is something that has to be done here. And I don't have contacts with the state police, but I'm thinking that as Tully, as the supervisor of Proctor, might be interested in this. And if they were going to put together a case against this guy, then my information, by me giving him the specific threat that was sent to me, they might be able to use that. And so I knew that Natalie had, so Lieutenant Tully had flown down to meet with Natalie, I think maybe October, not sure the exact time, but I think October or maybe early November, to get Natalie's communications. So I knew that Natalie had his phone number. So I messaged Natalie, and she got back to me. And I'm sure she wouldn't have normally given out the number, but she knew the situation, and she knew she could trust me with it. So I called Lieutenant Tully up. He answered the phone. I said, I'm Kevin Lenahan. I do a YouTube channel that covers the Karen Reed case, and I've been getting a certain amount of threats, but this one particular seems a little bit serious, and it went to, and this guy I'm told is also threatening Trooper Proctor's wife. And he said, okay. He goes, well, why don't you read out the threat to me? So I read it out, and my memory of it is that I had to read it out twice, because he was writing it down. He never, I don't believe I even told him the name of the channel. We never discussed the Karen Reed case. If I had to make a bet, I felt pretty confident this guy had no idea who I am. He was polite. He was professional. And after I was done giving him that information, he told me, you need to contact your local police because there's really nothing that we can do, but you have to contact your local police. Now, at the time, I actually had COVID. My whole family had COVID, and my mom was, in fact, in the hospital fighting for her life with COVID. And the last thing I wanted to do was go down to the local police station and bring COVID into that building. So I just said, okay, thank you. That's right. And I never contacted them. That's it. I never had any other contact with anybody from the state police. No, I never texted Lieutenant Tully. I had the one call. I'm going to guess it was 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes the most. Nothing was discussed about the Karen Reed case, Kate Peter, whatever. It was exactly what I just told you now. As Trump would say, it was the perfect call. No, but that really was it. And I've talked about it many times before, but Grant's nuts, and he just keeps putting this stuff out there. So what he found was a Facebook or whoever's, I found out who the person that gave this to him. So there's I'm just going to identify her because I'm not going to protect her anymore. Enough's enough. You're sharing my messages with people. All right. This woman, her Facebook name is Kristen Marie. She's on Twitter as Kristen Bell. All right. She had reached out to me for an issue related to a claim of an abusive teacher that she had dealt with in the school system in Canton. I didn't know what to do with it. I wanted to be responsible. Now, what I knew was, and that she gave me the guy's name and everything. And what I knew is that I have no experience dealing with this. I'm not a lawyer. This needs to be looked into by professional people, whether it's law enforcement or media that have experience handling those kind of things. So I reached out to Sean, and he gave me the name of the FBI agent who was assigned to the Karen Reed investigation. And she reached out to the agent, and the agent really just didn't help her. The agent told her, I only deal with corruption. So I tried to reach out to media sources too. Nobody wanted to touch it. I didn't know what to do. So I had a meeting with her sister, and with my partner at the time. And we had a private meeting on Zoom. And then what we decided to do was this. I'm going to put the information out publicly on my channel without giving her name and without giving out any identifying information of the teacher, because it could have been bullshit. You could ruin someone's life by putting out a bullshit claim like that. So I would never do it. So what I was saying is, I'm going to put this out there. Thank you, Fiona. And I'm going to put this out there. By the way, Fiona, I emailed you. I don't know if you saw that yet. I'm going to put this out there. And what we'll do is see if somebody else comes forward. And if they do, then maybe we have enough information that we can take to the police or something like that. I really didn't know how to proceed, except by trying to conduct yourself with concern and fairness to everybody involved. And so as a result of that, Turtle Boy knew, because he had communicated with this person many times before, and he considered her crazy, and he identified her. Sean told me she was crazy. So I had a lot of communications with her off and off. I tried to be supportive. I've never betrayed her. She's now betrayed me a second time. by releasing information. There's nothing in that information that is damning, and it doesn't mean anything that Grant tries to interpret to say. So that post was from December 18th, and it basically says what I just told you. I spoke to Tully, and he said, talk to the local police. I went back and looked at my December 18th messages with other people, and that's all that was being said. And then 2 days later, there's a message there where I talk about, she says, I hope you'll be vindicated. I don't have the post in front of me, so I'm going on memory. And I said, yeah, I mean, if I wanted to do that, I could put out information I have now, but, I want to be responsible. And what I've heard is that Aiden has been indicted. That's it. So this is what you saw in Grant's post. But he puts it together as though Tully told me that Aiden was indicted. No. And that was in the post, those conversations were separated by 2 days. Why were we talking about Aiden? Because she has initially she tried to inject herself into maybe get Aiden's attention by going to him with the teacher abuse thing, and he wasn't interested, and she got frustrated. So then she became an enemy, and she's been back and forth between trying to get his attention and being an enemy for the last year. And so around that time, they were doing some kind of a rally in Canton across from the police station or something. They got a permit for it. And so she had, for instance, she had messaged the pit bull who was running this, and we're not going to say her name, but you know who she is, and running this for Aiden. And Aiden was going to be there and guest speakers and all kinds of stuff like that. And but they didn't want Kristen to be there because whatever, they considered her crazy. And she said, well, I want to be there to support Karen Reed. And they're like, but you can't come. This is our rally and you can't participate in it. So she said, well, I'm coming. You can't stop it. And the pit bull said, listen, we spoke to Chief Rafferty and it's only the people we want there. And she said, well, you can't stop me. And so finally the pit bull said, look, if you show up here, Turtle Boy is going to blog about you tomorrow. And I hope you like your picture. And then she said, peace, Turtle Rider, which is unbelievably cultish thing to say. So she threatened her and said, we're going to embarrass you with a blog. And then we're going to, and that includes some picture that's going to embarrass you. And then we're going to say, and then she holds out with peace, Turtle Rider. Oh my God. It's so disturbing. The nature of these people. But I was supportive of her for all of that. And that's why we were talking about Aiden. And that's the only reason. But who did I hear that Aiden been indicted from? I couldn't tell you. It was a rumor going around. I heard it from different sources. But this is the thing. This is the difference between... If it was Grant, he would rush out and put it out there. Sources say he's so eager to try to be that guy that he puts everything he hears out there, and that's irresponsible. There's no benefit in me putting that out there because it could have been false. As it turned out, it wasn't, but it could have been false. And what's the point of just trying to rush it out? Just when he's indicted, it'll be in the newspapers. For me to put that out there would have been selfish. It added nothing to the debate. So, for example, maybe say a month or so earlier than that, I had heard through other sources that the federal grand jury had reached a no true bill decision. I didn't report it on the channel, I don't think. Going on memory now, but it was like, say a year ago. But I did tell a couple people, including Sean. Now, that information turned out to be false, that the grand jury had reached a no true bill. That was false. So you have to be really careful just because somebody gives you information. And in fact, you might even get information from a source that you trust and that has given you good information before. But if you don't confirm this in other ways, it's going to lead to errors because they're probably not lying to you, but they may have information. They have their own mistakes. Somebody fed them information that turned out to be unreliable, and you've compounded that mistake by reporting it. So that's all we were talking about there. No, I have never had any communications with Tully or anybody from the state police, so they did not tell me. I don't even know if they would know, right? I guess maybe, but there's other ways for these rumors to get around because there are people that work in the courthouses where this goes on. And it could even be someone that was a turtle rider, because turtle does have moles inside a lot of these operations. And so somebody on turtle side gets that, and they tell a few other people, and then one of those people maybe even trying to get him a warning, but then the information branches out and it spiders back and I end up with it. I don't know. That particular on that situation, it turned out to be accurate, mostly accurate information. In fact, I think what I had heard that there were 19 counts on the indictment and it turned out to be 18. So it was close, but I didn't report it and I never will, because it's not fair to inject that. There's no purpose in doing that. If he was indicted, it's going to come out within a couple of days anyway. So what would be the advantage of putting it out there? It doesn't make sense. So you really have to try to be responsible with information that you get and with analysis that you do. And someone like Grant is utterly irresponsible. He does that stuff all the time. And I think that's why people, for the most part, on both sides, just kind of dismiss him, which is too bad because he's an intelligent guy. But if he had an editor, a self-editor, something, and someone that could shape him, you could make him into something interesting and good and useful. But he believes that he's above the rest of humanity. So I don't think it's even possible for anybody to coach him. He has a really strange, distorted self-image that he thinks. So it's really unusual. So anyways, that's enough about that. Just rest assured, trust me, I have never spoke other than that one time to Tully, and that's always been my story, and I've said it all along. That's it. No other contacts with Lieutenant Tully. End of story, on that. So I want to give you guys a choice. Well, first, let me say thank you. So Wicked Uma said, Kevin, thank you for giving me a soft place to land through the insanity. You're welcome, Wicked, and we're always happy to see you here. And my friend Pat here, happy Thanksgiving to one of the best guys around, and his moderators, and all you loyal chat members. And you've been with us a long time, Pat. There aren't that many that go like way, way back, and there might be almost nobody that goes. Well, there's definitely nobody that goes back to pre-Karen Reed, but I don't even think there's a lot of people on this channel that have been with me through the beginning. So we didn't start doing lives until end of June or early July in the summer of 2023. And Thomas Fleming has obviously been but Tom's been my friend for many, many years. So, but in terms of like people that there aren't too, Fiona was good. Excellent. So you remember from the early days where first it was me, then it was me and Dave McGrath, and then it was me, Dave, and Aaron. So that's great. I know Colin Forrester was. I'm not sure if Colin's here tonight. So there definitely have been some people that have gone along this journey with us. And so it's been really, really interesting. Let's see. I think there are a couple more I had to say thank you to. So again, thank you, Kerry. I always appreciate you. Georgia Mom, again, thank you. Much appreciated. Sparks, I think I missed this one. Sparks said, happy Thanksgiving. Kevin, grateful to you and everyone in our community. Yes, and thank you very much. And that's how I feel there. I had some, we have a Discord group, and just the last week, it's like, not in the Discord, but just in general, 12 hours a day of constant feed of information coming to me and discussions about it from all different directions. And unfortunately, some drama. And it's, it's better than doing nothing, but it's not fun. And then I had a little bit of drama from somebody in my Discord. Most of the people there are great. They're all great, but one person was strangely saying that she worried that my position of standing against the mob was a sign that I was becoming part of a mob, that I was using the same tactics. And it just annoyed me. It's one of those things where you want to be open to criticism. You need criticism. I really, really, really value people that say, hey, consider doing it this way. or consider if you're making a mistake here, because if you don't do that, you're much more likely to make mistakes. So I really do value that. But this was just so strange to me. Be like, I'm sure there's people out there that would say, Kev, you're a liberal. And there's other people that say, Kev, you're a conservative. Well, they'd both be kind of right, because there are ideas that I have that are liberal and ideas that I have that are conservative. But if someone was to say, Kev, you are a Marxist, it's absurd. I mean, because there's nothing that I think that is Marxist. So likewise with this, my whole thing of standing against the mob, it's not about, I'm not standing against the pink shirts. I'm not standing against people that believe in free Karen Reed. I'm standing against mob-like behavior. And that mob-like behavior includes groupthink, includes nobody can ask questions. And if anybody does ask questions, the mob turns on them. That's a mob. That's the kind of mob that I'm talking about. We don't do that here, right? We all have different ideas about how Karen got home after allegedly striking John, right? We all have different ideas about when she knew what she knew. And none of us gets mad about that. It's because we don't know with certainty any of these things. So we should be able to ask questions. But on that other side, a lot of it, there is a mob. Not everybody is in the mob. Not everybody engages in that kind of behavior. But there is definitely a mob where you're not allowed to ask questions. And there is other aspects of the mob tactics where you're trying to destroy anybody that does ask questions. You're going to start digging into their background. Now, this stuff begins with Turtle Boy. He's developed those techniques over years, and the people around him, like the Pitbull. But it's not just that. There are other people that have succumbed to this kind of social media phenomena where if you don't like someone's opinion, you now have to dig for dirt to try to destroy them. And if you can't find it, you're going to make it up. There's another one, say maybe a year ago, maybe a little less than that, but what's her name? What's that girl's name? I forget her name, Semi-Alta, Semi-something. And Semolina, I think. And she's someone that was ardent free Karen Reed, but I was always respectful to her, and I'm always respectful to everybody that's on that. Semolina. And I even asked her on the show, I even said to her, you're welcome to come on the show and present your side. But what I found out was behind the scenes, she was trying to destroy me by sending people like, for instance, Karen McCormick, false information about me, saying, why do you even talk to Kevin? He's a predator. He's molested girls and this and that, just completely making shit up. I think it's disgusting. And that's the kind of mob-like activity that I oppose. And so when I put up on my t-shirts or on my screen standing against the mob, what I'm talking about, there it is right there, is that activity. I'm not putting standing against the mob. I don't mean standing against people that believe in Karen Reed. I mean standing against a mob that engages in that mob-like activity that is dangerous, that has resulted in the state can't even find lawyers to take these cases, where they've used this to intimidate people that work for official organizations to play ball. It's dangerous. That's what I stand against. And for a very long time, kind of felt like I was standing by myself. But there were other people out there. And now, more and more, we're all coming around. And it's changed. But that's what I mean by standing against the mob. And it has nothing to do with standing against people that just believe in Karen Reed. But I've said that on every time I've talked about it. So it was kind of frustrating for me to hear someone allegedly on my side say something like that. It bothered me. And so I took a few days off from my own Discord. I'm like, I can't deal with it anymore. I can't deal with it. So, but that's the way it is. Sometimes you need a vacation from this. And that's just the way it goes. So thank you, Turtle Boy. Integrity, you make me want to be a better person. I self-reflected briefly. I still dislike TB for victimizing others. So yeah, that's that. That's that. I think Turtle Boy. Oh, that's a guy actually. So yeah, I'm thinking there's another one, Turtle 2 or something. Yeah, you don't want to be completely non-judgmental. If someone is out there like the catfisher, Haley, what she's doing is wrong. If someone is doing things that are wrong, you don't want to give up that. Being judgmental is an important part in our arsenal to make people behave, to at least stay somewhat within the bounds of decency. So you don't want to give that up, but you just want to be careful that you're not becoming too quickly judgmental, because when try to find the way to see the goodness on the other side when you can, or in people or in individuals on the other side. Because what happens is you divide into camps and everybody demonizes everybody on the other side. And that's why it becomes easy for people, for instance, on the free Karen Reed side, to believe that I've done predatory things, which I never have, or to believe that I'm faking cancer and things like that. You know, this if you approach this neutrally and not from the side of a partisan side, you would, just listening to me, you wouldn't believe those things. And you would know it's wrong to believe things like that when there's no actual person accusing that person of that. So, but yet people buy into it because they wanted to. And that's a problem, but we want to make sure on all sides that we don't engage in that kind of thing. That's an extreme version of it, but I don't want to do it either. I don't want to know that just because somebody is actively trying to raise money or help Karen Reed, that I don't want to say, well, they're automatically bad or they're evil. This is why I said my times. I don't know Nick Rocco in his personal life, but I've met him a couple of times and I liked him and he seemed like a decent guy. I think he really believes in what he's doing. Some of the stuff that I think he's done on Court TV, I think he's too quick to start accusing people of things that there's no evidence for. But I don't think it's because he has a bad heart. I think just he's not really, maybe, even though he's very, very intelligent, he's not really maybe sophisticated enough to know you got to be careful about doing things like that. But there's growth, and he did peacefully demonstrate in front of Chris Albert's store during the summer of 2023. And I think now that's the Canton 9. Those charges were dropped. But I think those guys know that maybe the lines were being crossed, and I don't think they do it anymore. So you got to give people room to grow. And because as we've all grown, all right, and those of us that have been embroiled in this have all made mistakes and have all learned from them. And so you don't want to just say, well, this guy's bad or this person's bad. I think just be careful about that stuff. I don't know everything about these people. So if you know something about them that they're doing or done that is really, really bad, and I'm not taking away your right to make that opinion or that judgment. I'm just saying I have not seen anything that made me think he's not a genuine human being in my dealings with him. So you just take it for what it's worth. Fiona, happy Thanksgiving. Like I said, check the email. That was really interesting. We got to get to the bottom of that. And then if it turns out to be real, we can bring that to this audience, because I think you might be onto something there. So guys, yeah, when you have real things, reach out to me. Again, the email is always leitskev@gmail.com. So LEITSKEV@gmail.com. You can contact me from the other side too. If you're rude, I just ignore it. So you're wasting your time, but go ahead. Feel free if you want to get a couple of rude ones every day. It takes me 2 seconds to get rid of them. Let me have a sip of beer if it's okay with you guys. Everybody, let's drink. But you know what? Let's do, like, during the trial, we had a fake rule because obviously we weren't drinking that time of the day. But every time Judge Bev told Lally to raise his voice, we had to drink. Oh, I really do love a Pilsner beer. This is really, really good. Thomas Fleming, I also got some other German beer. Spaden, something like that. I'll have to call you tomorrow and let you know. I haven't tried it yet. I think it's a dark beer. It might even be a stout. I don't know, but I know stout's Irish. I don't know what it is. It was a dark beer. But Matt, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you too. And Pat, happy Thanksgiving. He says to one of the best guys around. Oh, I think we've already read that. Pat, you got a double read. The dude abides. This is always going to be good. May your turkey be moist, and may no one use that word to describe it. Outstanding. We got to publish a book of dudisms here. And one more, and then we'll get to the regular comments. Elaine, thank you very much, Elaine. And Tom had his Thanksgiving today, and it's a wonderful cook. And so he was with his wife and friends who I had the pleasure of meeting them a couple of years ago. I think a couple of years ago. And she's got this giant stove that has like 8 burners on it, professional grade stove, and she homemade jams and sauces and everything, just really, really good. And all we had was breakfast. He's the day I was there, and it was out, but he's getting Thanksgiving, so I can only imagine how good that meal was. But that was Diane, Steve, and Mary. I don't think they follow this case or listen to this channel, but to Tom Fleming and his wife, Allison, and Diane, Steve, and Mary, happy Thanksgiving. Very grateful to you. All right, so I'll get back to the regular chat. And so I don't know what you guys might want to do, but so I can just go over questions here. Lavish Love is a Guinness girl. I love Guinness. Let me just look at but the other thing that I could do is just look at the messages. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sparks. And I was got a message from Joe. So Joe, I was on Court TV last night with Joe Krowski and Nick Rocco. And actually, I think Nick Rocco hit it out of the park. He really did a good job. But Joe Krowski, it's such a, if you get a chance to ever watch Joe on any segment, but especially when he's on Vinny, it's really entertaining. He just loves trying to tweak Vinny. And I think Vinny's like kind of mixed about it. He maybe doesn't love it, but he understands how entertaining it is. And so I'm sure they would have Joe back every night if they could do it, because it's must-see TV when those two go at it. It's pretty funny. Joe is just a rare storyteller. I wish I could see Joe in court. It must be incredible to watch Joe on a trial. Heather is also a reformed lawyer. Heather's a reformed lawyer. Joe is still an active lawyer. Yeah, Joe is great. Joe is great. I talk to Joe once in a while, but he said he'll come on the show someday, but right now he's busy with a trial, federal meth dealer trial in federal court up in Bangor, Maine, which is way up in Maine. So, so what we can do tonight, I can take on questions from you guys, or one of the chapters that I had in the book that I put together for the end of the book, but haven't had time to finish because it's like kind of comes after the conclusion of it, is an A to Z on the case. So if you want, I can start to go over A to Z on the case. And, just a lot of this is debunking things in the case that were debunked at trial, but that a lot of people don't understand because they couldn't see the whole trial. I mean, look, most people wouldn't have time to see the whole trial. And unfortunately, if you're getting all your information from that side, they don't tell you shit. So Melanie, like for instance, Melanie Little, a lawyer or a reform lawyer, I'm not sure. Things that are debunked or explained in the trial, she will never tell you. Never. Doesn't really want anything out there that's not going to fit the narrative. Aidan Kearney, same way. He's never going to tell you anything. Young Jelly, never. I don't think any of these guys ever. Brandy Churchwell, she's like the one that seems nice, right? Nope. No interest in explanations. And so these explanations are missing from the public. So many people in the public don't have it. So I had been throwing these together a little while ago. Let me take a look at it now. I haven't read it. All right. So A to Z, we'll hit some of these. A, the Alberts didn't come out of the house. Why didn't the Alberts come out of the house that morning when there was a fire truck and police cruisers and an ambulance outside, and Karen was making a lot of noise, screaming. How is it that Brian and Nicole and Brian Jr. didn't wake up? And Brian and Nicole, their bedroom window was on the second floor, but nearest to where all this was going on. So we know that the measurement from the front door to where John was found was, we're told by the state police, was 72 feet. So what was the distance from where John was found to the second floor window? Probably similar. So say 75 feet. So why didn't they wake up? Now, this was something that was, when I was first covering this case, listing all the details, talked to someone who was also in law enforcement, but not from this area. And when I put out all the information, he was just kind of dismissing it all. But then when I mentioned this part, this gave him a lot of pause, because he was like, huh, that is really odd, right? And it bothered me for a long time too. But this is why you have to try to understand things a little bit more deeply. Now, there could not possibly be a perfect, absolute explanation as to why someone didn't wake up. There's no way to do that. All you can, because how could you know? Unless you had a camera in there filming them asleep, which who does that, right? Well, Charlie Sheen does that, right? But when you actually start looking at it and start thinking about it, then it becomes much more reasonable to understand why they didn't wake up. So first of all, let's point out the fact that Karen's parents didn't wake up when she was calling them. 3 calls in the early morning hours. They didn't answer that. So there's a blizzard going on, and 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. And that kind of wind puts you in a deep sleep, and it absorbs a lot of noise. So in the case of both Brian, Nicole, Albert, and Karen Reed's parents, they didn't hear the phone. Now, in terms of the commotion that was going on outside the house, so Officer Good described how when the wind was gusting, it was so much that you had to scream just to hear someone next to you. And that's how it is now we've looked at the weather report, and at that time it was 30 to 40 mile an hour sustained winds gusting from 50 to 55. That's heavy, solid, consistent wind. And that's going to absorb sound. It's winter. So people got their windows down. I don't know what the situation was in their house, whether they had, heavy shades or curtains or anything like that, but there's a barrier there. Also, when we consider how people sleep, a lot of people think they're light sleepers, but they really aren't, because they only remember the time when something that wasn't very loud woke them up. But none of us remembers the time when we don't wake up. So if there was a car accident in front of your house and it made a loud noise and you didn't wake up, chances are you don't know about it. And so you don't have that reason to say, wow, I guess I'm a heavy sleeper sometimes. But in reality, most of us, especially once we get into our 40s and 50s, we actually have this kind of second sleep kind of thing where we go to sleep and we drift kind of in and out. Maybe we go to heavy sleep for a little while, but then we get up, because people our age get up and go to the bathroom, say 4 or 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever. And afterwards, when we come back, for some reason, we go into the deepest sleep of the night. That's when you wake up all covered in drool. And so from when you get to that second sleep, it might only be an hour and a half or something like that, it is a deep, deep sleep. And you could drop a bomb in someone's room and I don't think they're going to wake up. So the simple fact is that they didn't wake up, and it's not that unusual that people think. They didn't answer the phones. They didn't hear the phones. They had been drinking the night before, and they were in that heavy time of sleep. The testimony of Detective Sergeant Lank. He might be Lieutenant Lank now. I'm not sure, but I think he might have been Sergeant at the time. But he was, so the house was not left locked. Either he walked in or Jen McCabe went up. The door was open. So the door is open. Why would the door be left open if you've committed a murder inside? But so Jen goes inside, walks up, and she woke them up in the bedroom. Then presumably it was Jen that let in Officer Lank, but possibly just walked in. I don't know. But in any case, there was no barrier to him coming in. And then so the Alberts are getting dressed and they come down the stairs, and Lank sees them coming downstairs and said they look, and particularly Brian Albert looked like he just woke up and probably hungover too. It'd been a long day of traveling and drinking. So just all the evidence there does not make it at this point in any case that surprising that they didn't wake up. So I think we can put that one to rest enough that you can at least move on to the other evidence. And A also is the answered calls, the so-called answered calls by the Alberts from Jen. And Turtle Boy falsely made this claim in Phelps's documentary in episode 3. He said that 2 of the calls were answered, but it was established in trial that none of the calls were answered. 2 of the calls went to voicemail. And if a call goes to, if you call someone and it goes to voicemail on your phone bill or the extraction on your phone, which is not exactly the same thing, but it's going to show as answered because it went to voicemail. But on the person who received the call, it's not going to show as answered, and it didn't in this case. So, and there were several other examples of that came out in the trial of similar situations. So, no, the calls were not answered. That was fully debunked at the trial. I don't know where Turtle was. I don't know if he just wants to deceive his audience, but no, the calls were not answered. So let's go to B. Blood in the solo cups. So a lot of people were bothered by this, and the defense made a big deal about it. Why did they gather blood in the solo cups? Why were they stored the way they were? Well, one of the things you can look at here is, okay, the only reason to collect blood in a cup, or the only reason to collect blood at a hit and run scene is if you actually think the guy was in a fight, and the blood might be someone else's. Because if you want blood samples from the victim, you can just get it at the hospital. So they only collected that blood on the chance that it belonged to someone else because they didn't know what they were looking at that time. They didn't know that it was a hit and run, and they didn't know what they were looking at. They found a broken cocktail glass, so that I'm sure that made them wonder, was there an altercation out here? And so they got that blood to see if it belonged to someone else. Now, it was never tested because by the time the state police were collecting the evidence to transfer to the Norfolk County DA's office evidence room, that was at the end of the day on the 29th. By then they knew it was a hit and run, so they knew they didn't need the blood. But the important thing to learn from that is if this was a situation where you have cops that show up to a crime scene and they realize that the crime involves another cop, and you're thinking they're corruptly want to look the other way. So, for example, let's say a cop is off duty and he's drinking and he gets in an accident and he strikes the street, the telephone pole, and the telephone pole falls down and he's at the scene. The cops show up and they smell alcohol in his breath. Well, if it's a cop they know and they want to hook him up, they're just going to pretend not to smell it, right? But this is what happens if you're trying to help out. You become you become passive. You're helping out passively. You're not actively trying to cover up a crime. You're not planting evidence, but you are performing a passive action. But you're basically looking the other way. You're going into Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes, which probably very few people here remember. I used to love that show. I saw it in the reruns, but I see nothing. That's the idea. So if you're the Canton police and you show up to 34 Fairview and you suspect that Brian Albert inside the house was involved with a crime and you want to suddenly become Sergeant Schultz and you're like, I see nothing, because you don't want to get him blamed because his brother is a detective on the Canton police force. Well, what do? You do nothing. You do only what you have to do. You do nothing extra. You do nothing above and beyond the call of duty. So you're not out there with a leaf blower, and you're not collecting blood in solo cups. You got so you see blood there. No one's going to say later on, "Hey, why didn't you collect that blood?" And you'll be like, "We didn't have evidence bags," right? Because that's what Now the defense criticized them. Why didn't you get evidence bags? They didn't have evidence bags, and if they waited, the snow would have melted and the blood would have lost. The blood would have been lost. So, but if they were in cover up mode, look the other way mode, Sergeant Schultz mode, they would have not collected that blood or taken out the leaf blower. So these guys were not in cover up mode. They were in motivated cop mode. They were trying to solve what happened to John. That's just common sense, common logic. Let's see. We're not going to go all the way to Z. Don't worry. Let's see. All right. So maybe we'll just do two more. We'll stay on C because these are good ones too. Canton cops. Why didn't they go into the house? This is a big question for a lot of people, right? Why John is found dying on the lawn. He ultimately dies. Why didn't they investigate inside the house? There's a cocktail glass out there. So that cocktail glass could have come from that house, right? Why didn't they look in the kitchen to see if there were similar cocktail glasses inside the house? Oh, I see Thomas messaged me. So I had let me just check it. Let me just check. All right, so I'll check email. Let me see. I don't know what the response is here. So let's see if anybody's got it. Okay. All right. So we got the document. I have no idea what this is about. So you will be getting, as you often do, the raw Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin analysis, bartender analysis. I am not a lawyer. In case you doubted that, in case you were wondering, is this guy a lawyer? I'm sure you were all looking at me saying, wow, this guy might be a lawyer. In case you're wondering, no, I was never a lawyer. Let's make this a little bitter. I'm going to bring this up so you guys can see it too. Oh, good. This is working great. Thank you guys for sending this to me. So who was it sent that to me? That was actually, and thank you for Tom Fleming for alerting me. And so that was a couple people sent it to me. So Kerry and Francesca, two of the best supporters we have. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Let me bring it in so that you guys can see it. Opposition to see. Commonwealth versus Aiden Timothy Kearney. Commonwealth's opposition to the defense motion to compel Rule 14 discovery for issuance of a Rule 17 summons. The defendant has moved this court to authorize summons to Selco Partnership, so Verizon, for any messages from August 10th to 2023. All right, so this is what I suspected it would be. So they're trying to go, this is the state's reply to an effort by Aiden's defense to get Michael Morrissey's private messages. And as you see what's going on here, there's a lot of now cooperation between Aiden's defense team and Karen's defense team. So this was reflected in a recent motion by them to also go after similar messages, and it was discussed in court the other day. We can go over that again, and I went over it on Court TV. So they want all emails or text messages sent or received from August 10th to 2020 beginning on August 10th. So I guess that'll be up to the present. Yeah, to the present, August 10th to the present, with the Apple iPhone or the iCloud account assigned to the private subscriber, Michael Morrissey. So to retain the resulting production of records under impoundment, appoint a special master independent from an expensive the DA to provide all the parties, Rule 14, blah, blah, blah. All right. Yada, 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 as they said on Seinfeld. Yoked to, well, this must have been written by McLaughlin, who I've noticed, I asked before, like every once in a while, some of the motions that the prosecution's been putting out are written really well, have a kind of a literary form to them. And somebody told me it was McLaughlin, that she's a good writer. So we'll see if that applies here. But yoked to the defendant's breathtakingly broad Rule 17 motion, accompanied by a novel reverse taint team procedure, is a purported Rule 14 motion directed at Morrissey personally, largely duplicative of the avalanche of discovery demands and motions, some meritorious, some not, previously advanced by the defense. The present defense motion is utterly frivolous, designed to retard the progress of the case, and unworthy of this court's consideration and time. The Commonwealth opposes. The purported basis for this Rule 17 request is what he deems an ex parte communication. Now, I can explain, I think, what this is about, but let's see. I think they're going to explain it here, and McLaughlin will be much better at it than me. So an ex parte communication, which means one party, I believe, to the presiding judge. Tom, is that what that means? Thomas Fleming, ex parte means one party or something like that. I don't know my Latin. To the presiding judge sitting on Mr. Kearney's case, attributing negative conduct to Mr. Kearney on private email. So, yeah, he was intimidating the witnesses, as we all know. Time for another sip. So, if you'll indulge me, let me take a sip. Stop for 1 second. Oh, I think that's actually the first beer that I've had since this summer with Tom Fleming at the Cape. So, boy, that tastes good. All right. So, communication from Morrissey to the presiding judge sitting on Mr. Kearney's case, attributing negative conduct to Mr. Kearney, characterizing this as a knowing and willful violation. The defendant suggests it begs the question whether there were equally discoverable responses from the judiciary, and if so, did Morrissey cover them or delete them? He adds that the other obvious issue raised is whether there are other discoverable communications memorialized and hidden away on his personal devices. With the begged question and the obvious issue, the defendant clearly flags that he is improperly advancing a discovery motion cloaked in the garb of a Rule 17 motion, a point that the Commonwealth shall develop at greater length below. Yeah, this is definitely written by McLaughlin. It's definitely got that good writing quality to it. Rule 17 is not a discovery tool to be invoked merely for the exploration of potential evidence. What happened was this: a witness in the Karen Reed case, having been victimized by the defendant's online harassment, sought a civil harassment prevention order pursuant to in the Stoughton District Court. And I believe that was Chris Albert. Personnel from the Norfolk District Attorney's Office provided standard and entirely conventional assistance to the witness in preparing and filing the necessary paperwork. Present in the room when the paperwork was filed, though not playing any official role in the receipt and handling of the application, was the clerk's office personnel member later identified by District Attorney Morrissey. On information and belief, this individual was well known among her colleagues as an admirer of the defendant's propaganda. So it's a turtle mole. His propaganda, that's great to hear. I love it. I'm surprised. It's like, but I love this description. On information and belief, this individual was well known among her colleagues as an admirer of the defendant's propaganda efforts on behalf of Karen Reed. Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. This is a public employee writing this. You gotta cheer that on. That's just great. I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, I think that's outstanding. In due course, the hearing went forward, as is typical for an anti-harassment proceeding. The initial application was considered ex parte, and thus Mr. Kearney was not notified and was not present. So again, one side. This is why neither he or his lawyers are notified. And the reasons are for that are it's an emergency situation where you're protecting the witness who's come forward. If an order is granted ex parte, it expires within days, and the responding party is summoned in for a hearing on whether the order shall be extended on a long-term basis. The judge presiding at such a hearing considers the entire matter on de novo basis without reference to the ex parte hearing or order. So the judge is just going to look at the evidence on his own and not consider the actual emergency order that was put out. In this instance, the application was denied in the initial ex parte stage, and then there was nothing before the court. After the denial, and thus the termination of the case, the district attorney sent the communication appended to the defense motion to the Chief Justice of the District Court and various others, including Judge O'Malley. So he's not, I think what you take from that is Morrissey is taking precautions here. He knows he's got moles, certainly in the Stoughton District Court, and rumors are, and reasonably also in the Norfolk, his own office, the Norfolk County DA's office. So he has to be careful. And he also knows, we'll see if they get to this here, but the defense team of Karen Reed was leaking stuff to Karen Reed and to Turtle Boy. So no way could they be included in it. It is notable what the communication did not do. It raised no issue concerning any active case before the court. It did is no modification. It raised no concerning issue on any active case before the court. Okay. It did not complain about the outcome of the then concluded hearing or ask that Judge O'Malley reconsider the motion. So it wasn't trying to, Morrissey wasn't trying to interfere with that process. And this or that, or ask that a different judge other than O'Malley hear it. So didn't try to take it out of that and transfer it to someone else. It did not suggest that Judge O'Malley had acted improperly, or so much as hint that the district attorney would encourage the applicant to appeal the denial of the order. Did not talk about any active criminal or criminal case. I'm sorry, it did not talk about any active criminal or civil case involving the defendant, who in this is Aiden in this case. It did not even suggest that Mr. Kearney had acted improperly, but only made the factual observation that he was the recipient of an improper leak. Okay, so what they're saying here is Morrissey is not trying to influence whether or not the protective order should be granted to the witnesses in the case of Aiden. All they're dealing with here is the fact that there's a leak. That's the claim anyways. In short, it was not an improper ex parte communication in any accepted sense of the term. It was not an improper ex parte communication. So it was ex parte, but it was proper. Rather, the obvious and entire thrust of the district attorney's communication was his concern that the leaks from the court clerk's office erode the trust and integrity between the courts and the public, and his concern that such conduct would be repeated and that the Stoughton District Court might in the future handle ongoing motions or other requests for warrants that, if leaked unsolicited to a third party, would affect the orderly and fair administration of justice. So what he's saying is the DA Morrissey did not, keep in mind, these are separate branches of the government. The judges are part of the judicial branch of the government, and the prosecution is part of the executive branch of the government. So there's a separation here. And in no way, what they're saying here is no way did DA Morrissey try to disrespect that. He wasn't trying to influence the judge's decision. The judge is going to weigh the facts of the complaint that came up and make a decision based on that alone. What he was saying is you need to be aware that this stuff is getting leaked out to the very guy that the complaint is against, that the requested protection is for. This is against. This observation was simply cold truth. I love this writing. This observation was simply cold truth. But even if that were not so, it was an entirely appropriate communication. The district attorney is the elected advocate of the people and the chief law enforcement officer of the Norfolk district. The Norfolk district attorney is responsible for enforcing the rights of the public where the Commonwealth has an interest or is a party. As the chief elected as the chief elected law enforcement officer of Norfolk County overseeing the criminal justice system, the district attorney. I wonder if that's something they make little mistakes sometimes in these things just to make it seem like it's not overly prepared, like they leave a word out or something like that. There are some, I can tell you from the screenwriting world that there are some people when they're shopping a screenplay around Hollywood, they've gone over and over and over to get, many dozens of times to make sure it's in great order, but they don't want to seem like they did that. They don't want it to seem too refined. So they make a few little mistakes here and there. So it'll look like this person is so talented. They did this on the first try. It's an old trick. As the chief elected law enforcement officer, I think it's supposed to be of Norfolk County, and the of is missing. Norfolk County overseeing the criminal justice system, the DA has both the right and the duty to bring to the attention of the appropriate judicial officers actions by court employees contrary to law, inappropriate, and harmful to the administration of justice. In other words, the leaks. Moreover, that the leak caused witnesses in the ongoing murder prosecution to lose all confidence in the courts of the Commonwealth. And who can blame them, right? Think about this. The witnesses are hounded mercilessly all summer by a vicious mob, by an online cult leader. They don't know what to do. They've never seen anything like it. They don't know who to go to. They're not lawyers themselves. So they get some advice from somebody and they go to get a protective order at the Stoughton District Court. It's denied, but then just the very process of them doing that is not only leaked out, it is leaked out to the person that's persecuting them. And he uses that to continue persecuting them. It's just stunning what goes on in this case. And again, I talked about this earlier. So if you're, let's say, Rita Lombardi, do you believe that's acceptable? Just leaving aside your loyalty to this cause and to Karen Read's innocence? Do you think that's normal? Do you think that's acceptable? I got to think you don't, because you're someone that seems to be very concerned with Canton politics and making sure things are done not corruptly, right? But do you want to live in a state where people that are being persecuted by a mob and they instead of trying to handle it like that might have been done a century ago, where you bring out your own mob and kick some ass? No, they try to do everything by the book, and they go to a court, and that court not only doesn't help them, but now it adds on to the pile of persecution because of a leak. Do you want to live in that kind of a system? Is that how you want your community to be? So maybe these are the kind of things, if you're looking for another cause, maybe this could be it, right? The defendant's immediate use of the leaked material was to publicly gloat about it and the outcome of the hearing, and to further mock the witnesses as part of his campaign of vilification against them, as demonstrated by his post in his sued not very anonymous. I never heard it put that way. I know what a pseudonym is, but that was an interesting way of putting it. But I guess a pseudonym in other words, it's a pseudonym that everybody understands who it is. So in his post Clarence Woods Emerson account, where he says, because the people who work in Stoughton District Court like me more than him, meaning Chris Albert, they sent this humiliating affidavit to me. This is not the fault of McLaughlin because she's quoting Turtle Boy. So this is Turtle Boy's poor writing. Humiliating after David to me so we could shame him some more. I think it's supposed to be affidavit. Yeah, it's got to be what it is. So Turtle Boy probably dictated this over an audio system that converted it to text. And what he said was affidavit, but it converted that to after David. So this humiliating affidavit to me so we could shame him some more. We have put in a request for the court audio, and hopefully, with a little luck, we'll have it for the live show on Sunday. So Turtle Boy will tell you that his cause is justice, right, for Karen, but it's not. It never was. None of this stuff was designed, even the witness intimidation. Now, the charges are correct because he is stating on his show all the time that he's going to hound them to the ends of time unless they recant their testimony, essentially. But it's not even really about an expectation that would happen. It's all about entertainment. It's all about content generation. And again, not to harp on it, but the people that signed into a kind of partnership with them had to be aware of that was going on when they signed in with them. So McLaughlin continues, it's all there. The acknowledgement that a person or persons who work in the Stoughton District Court leaked the information to the defendant. The smug assertion that they did so out of bias toward the defendant and or dislike for the applicant. The improper purpose, so we could shame him some more. That's the person applying for the protection. And the plan to further humiliate him by playing on Turtle Boy Live show and no doubt commenting on the audio of an official court proceeding. Differently put, the defendant took the denial of an anti-harassment order against him as both an incentive and a tool to escalate his ongoing attempted intimidation and harassment of witnesses in the pending Reed homicide case. Although believing the above discussion establishes that the defendant's factual predicate for obtaining a Rule 17 order is utterly devoid of merit, the Commonwealth now turns to the legal basis for a Rule 17 order. This is probably this is going to be the dry part of the conversation, I'm guessing. The purpose of Mass R. Crim is to expedite the trial by providing a time and place before trial for the inspection of the subpoena materials. In deciding a motion, I don't even know if we should read all this. This is definitely going to be dry. Dry legalese. This is not McLaughlin writing. This is her quoting. Let's see how we can skip that. The defendant accurately outlines the legal requirements necessary for this court to order a summons and bravely asserts that he has met them. See, this is good writing. You don't usually see this in motions, but gives short shrift to any actual showing that he has done so. As noted, the first requirement is a showing that the documents are evidentiary and relevant. The defendant has shown none of these. Come on, get your little boy better on this, Turtle. Has he been shirking his duties? Or do you just don't have a case to give him? Rather, the defendant argues that because he has shown that the district attorney complained about misconduct by a clerk in a concluded case, and because he concluded a communication from a witness inferably made to someone in his office, but in any case in his possession, one not hitherto produced in Rule 14, that these alleged improprieties logically betoken more of the same. Betoken. This is like the John Grisham of Massachusetts, the James Madison of Massachusetts. He urges that it is possible there is more out there. It's also possible the moon. Oh, I can't believe I'm reading this in an official motion. It is so. Let me just read it again. He urges that it is possible there is more out there. Well, it is also possible that the moon is made of green cheese, but mere possibility, even if couched as likelihood, has never been found enough to meet the Lampron standard. Bravo! If this is what is it? Katie? Not Katie. I don't know her first name. McLaughlin. Unable even to show that the documents he seeks exist, the defendant cannot possibly make the higher showing that they are evidentiary and relevant. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what they're saying. I mean, what the defense is saying is that there are communications. We have that, so we want all the communications. There are communications that they consider to be improper because they were done over personal phone. Rather, he asked this court to create at the Commonwealth's expense a special master to paw through over a year of the district attorney's personal cell phone documents and turn over whatever the master in his direction deems discoverable. Ironically, the defendant quotes Lampron's stricture that potential relevance and conclusory statements regarding relevance are insufficient. One paragraph later, however, he attempts to justify his motion simply by stating that the statements and discoveries sought are potentially exculpatory and reasonably expected to provide evidence. So he's right. If I don't know if Betterow prepared that, but if it's saying that according to the Lampron stricture, potential relevance and conclusory statements regarding relevance are insufficient. So you can't just say there's potential relevance here. But then a paragraph later, he justifies the motion by saying the discoveries sought are potentially exculpatory and reasonably expected to provide evidence. So, yeah, that's a contradiction. Apparently, Mr. Kearney does not grasp that when the Supreme Judicial Court repeatedly says that potential relevance is insufficient, it means the potential evidence is insufficient. Oh, I love this writing. As the defendant has failed to satisfy the first requirement of Lampron, his motion should be denied. However, the Commonwealth shall briefly address the remaining requirements, each of which the defendant has failed to meet. As the defendant correctly states, the second requirement imposes on the moving party an affirmative obligation to show that no other source likely exists for the desired records. Consider one example of a probable applicable source. Generally, any communications by the DA with a court official regarding matters concerning the court's business is a public record, whether sent by private email or official email. Mr. Kearney has not shown that he has first availed himself of this option. So rather than go after the private, just say, hey, what are all the messages relevant to this? Although inferably, he or his counsel are both are obviously acquainted with the public records law. As to the third required showing, the defendant must show that the party cannot properly prepare for trial without such production and inspection in advance of the trial, and that the failure to obtain such inspection may tend unreasonably to delay the trial. The Lampron super, the defendant merely states in a half sentence, prior inspection is necessary for a fair trial. Apparently, he believes that an adequate showing is accomplished by reciting the magic words. Oh, wow. Betterow, they are destroying you. Whoever wrote this, I'm thinking McLaughlin, she is leaving your career an utter wasteland. Similarly, he purports to satisfy the fourth requirement by stating that he is not engaged in a general fishing expedition, but to the contrary, the defendant's quest is the quintessence of a fishing expedition. He adds that rather than the bias and potential bad faith of investigators and their collusion with witnesses for improper purposes is always relevant and admissible. But the fourth requirement is not about relevance and admissibility. Those things go to the first requirement. Moreover, the defendant's purported ex parte communication with the court and the appended comment from the witness upon which he has. Sorry, I know I'm probably boring you guys reading all this. So that was a lot of legal logic there. And in the footnote here, Exhibit C to Mr. Bettero's letter. We're getting near the end, so we'll just enjoy the language of this, even if we don't always understand it. As the defendant has failed to provide a satisfactory basis for a Rule 17 summons, the court need not reach his novel proposal that the fruits of the proposed search be held by the Norfolk Superior Court Clerk's Office and then reviewed by a special master at the expense of the district attorney to go through over a year of communications on any matter whatsoever and attempt to extract the Rule 14 discoverable statements which the defendant posits must exist. Apparently, this scheme is aimed at deflecting the oft-expressed concerns of the appellate courts, pointing out that the vast amount of data often contained on cellular phones and the potential for invasion of privacy. It would not have the virtue, from the defendant's point of view, at least, of delaying progress of the case toward trial by months at a conservative estimate and forcing the district attorney to financially subsidize that delay. The defendant states the district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of Norfolk County and the ultimate authority over all Norfolk County assistant prosecutors, whether designated assistant or special assistant. He is not, however, the prosecutor the present cases. I think, again, there's a missing word there. He is not, however, the prosecutor of the present cases. Although it is within the district attorney's power to choose and dismiss prosecutors for the present cases, and indeed to try them himself, should he so wish, that does not distinguish the defendant's matters from any other criminal cases in Norfolk County, and hardly justifies personally ordering the DA to dance to the tune of the defendant's discovery requests. Rule 14 discovery can and should be had through counsel of record, upon whom the defendant has hardly been shy in pressing his demands, whether directly or through the court. The present motion smacks less of an honest attempt to procure, there's another missing word there, to procure legitimate discovery from one to provide fresh fodder to the defendant's various internet extravaganzas. Wow, that's worth reading again, even trying to reinsert the words that are missing. The present motion smacks less of an honest attempt to procure legitimate discovery than one to provide fresh fodder for the defendant's various internet extravaganzas. So they're trying to suggest that this whole thing, the only purpose is to try to get more material for Turtle Boy to put on his show. That's amazing. Whoever would have thought you would see that written in a motion. Wow. That said, the Commonwealth recognizes its obligations and will continue to produce to the defendant any statements of persons the Commonwealth intends to call as witnesses, and all exculpatory information, including any material that bears upon truthfulness or could be read as suggesting bias, as well as any material that would question one's credibility or impartiality. That includes communications made by the DA, who is not prosecuting this case. In fact, it's not even a regular prosecutor, it's a special prosecutor that was brought in. So there's no evidence that the DA had a bias. If he did have a bias, there's no evidence that that had any bearing on the special prosecutor. That's why you have a special prosecutor. That's why the DA brought in a special prosecutor. So it would be a special prosecutor. The idea is someone is independent from an office that is accused of something by that defendant. So there's no appearance of impropriety. You're bringing in someone new, someone special, someone outside. in that respect, the Commonwealth provided the Karen Reed defense team. So we see the mention of Karen Reed's defense team. They provided, so has on November 26th, that's yesterday, provided the Karen Reed defense team with a Rule 14 discovery, including copies of various messages. So we saw in the hearing that Karen Reed's team was looking for this too, and they accused the DA, Yannetti, accused him of being untrustworthy, including copies of various text messages. Many of these involve witnesses in the Karen Reed prosecution, who by and large are the alleged victims and witnesses in the prosecution of Mr. Kearney. The Commonwealth is prepared to provide the same discovery in the present cases. So they're going to give the same stuff that they already have turned over. The motion should be denied. Now, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, so let me just get rid of this. That was a great read. Thank you guys for sending me that. I am not a lawyer. In all my screenplays and work that I've written, I don't think I've written any cases involving lawyers. So I am not a lawyer, and I have not written a character that played one on TV. Is that the way to put it? So I am definitely not a lawyer. Lavish Love said happy Thanksgiving, but rather happy Phelps Day. All right. And thank you, Lavish. And Francesca said happy Thanksgiving too. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me that. And so I did read it. Thank you. Thank you, Francesca, as always. Oh, okay. And Jill, yes, I got to it. So these are obviously a little bit older. Sorry, guys. I hopefully I read it well. I'm not a professional reader, and a lot of that stuff was outside of my training, and I didn't have a chance to read it beforehand. Did I earn the right to take a sip of beer from reading that out? Whether I earned it or not, I'm going to take one. Man, I wish we could all have a beer together, or whatever type of nectar you prefer. Well, Layla, I have named the book, but the publisher has different ideas. So a lot is up in the air. The publisher has certain concerns. So it is unlikely to be out before the trial. However, the good news is that has allowed the addition there's some stuff going on, but we just have to be, some of the stuff I don't know if will be allowed to put in the book, because not by lawyers, but just we don't want to harm innocent people. But there's some really mind-blowing stuff that nobody knows about that we hope to be able to put in the book. And but we'll just be responsible about it. Hey, Joe. So I'll just do two more on in the A to Z. Well, I'll just do one more. I'll finish on the Canton cops. Why didn't they go in the house? So if there's an emergency, you can search a house. If you have reason to believe, like you hear somebody screaming in the cellar, that wasn't the case here. Otherwise, you have to get a warrant, or you have to get permission from the homeowner. So the first question would be, was it likely that they could have got a warrant to search that house? Well, I'm told by every other lawyer I've talked to, the answer is no. But I will say I'm not so sure about that, because I do believe that the cops could have constructed there, and there would have been a tendency on the part of the clerks to want to rubber stamp that a little bit. Maybe rubber stamp is too strong a word, but to go over it, unless it was completely unreasonable to let them do that. So I think maybe they could have got a warrant on that. I don't know how long the process would have taken. But I don't think it was likely for them to ask for it, and I don't think it was likely for them to ask Brian Albert for a position to search the house. And yes, does it factor in the fact that Brian's a cop and So these guys don't want to search a cop's house, and his brother is a cop that they work with. Sure, it'd be naive to think that those things aren't factors. But from everything that we saw, these cops were motivated in terms of bringing out. So Detective Lank, who was the one that went into the house, was also part of that 3-man investigation with the leaf blower to not only melt the snow around where they found John's body, but to film it, which actually turned out to be a brilliantly effective technique that preserved evidence in a way that you never would have been able to see, because you got to see where the blood was, not only location wise but level wise. So, and actually, I have to go back and watch this again. I believe the blood was a little bit on top of the snow, and I think the reason for that would be because it's John's blood, presumably, and we know that he had blood in his nose and in his mouth. And Karen, when she tried to give him mouth to mouth, ended up with blood on her face and on her hands. So that blood would have dripped on the snow, and there would have been, by the time that was going on, at least 2, 3, 4 inches, probably 4 inches of snow at that time. So you got a sense of that looking, I think, at the combination of the leaf blowing with the video. You get a sense of the depth of where that blood was. So these were motivated cops, and if they were in look the other way mode, which is what is the implication as to why they didn't search the house, they don't seem to have been in that kind of mode at all. I think Detective Lank just made a decision based on the fact that the house wasn't blocked from entry. He had no problem going into the house, and he was there as the Alberts were coming down the stairs. And to him, it looked like they had just woken up. So he had no reason to believe anything had gone on in the house. Meanwhile, Matt McCabe arrived during that initial conversation. I'm not sure if Brian Albert Jr. came down the stairs or wherever came into the room and talked to them at that point. But they had at least 4 people, if not 5, to tell Lank that John never came in the house. So with that information that John never came in the house, and seeing that he had no barrier to getting into the house, and seeing that the Alberts clearly had just woke up, I think he really had no reason to ask Brian Albert to search the house. And I just think it's important to think about it that way. Instead of just take that superficial 10,000. It's good to start out with it. There's a role for that 10,000 view flyover where you look at the case and you say, okay, let's just look at the basic facts here. Basic fact: Boston cop found on the lawn of a home of another Boston cop, and they don't search the house. It's right to ask questions about that, but then dig deeper. And when you dig deeper, I think you realize it's really nothing. So let me look to the questions here. Been on a long time, considering this is an impromptu. And let's see if anybody's. I'm going to roll back just a little ways in the comments, and then I'll speed up. When you get behind, like as Tom will tell you, when you get behind in the conversation and try to get caught up, you're sometimes a little bit out of it. Comfort and Joy says, it's ironic that you've been dragged through the mud and called every name in the book, but you're the one on Court TV and have already written a book. I guess good guys don't always finish last. Well, the book hasn't been published, and we'll see what happens. And does that lead to, for me as someone who's been attempting to be a writer for years, does that open the doors to something else? I'm not sure, because this publisher does mostly true crime, and I don't know if I want to do another true crime book, but we'll see. And we'll see if they do publish this one. We did sign with them, but until they actually put out the thing that we're publishing it, we don't know what's going to happen. So, it really was never about something that I wanted. I was never seeking gain for myself in this case, and really just kind of most of the time wanted to get out of it. Oh, something I wanted. I think I started to tell you this last time and did something interrupted. But so I had every 3 months, I get my cancer scans, and I'm on a medicine that keeps it stable, and it's been mostly stable for 6 years now, which is a very fortunate time to get out of it. But I had my recent scans, and I read the results myself. I go to Boston Friday to the consultation with the oncologist, but the scans were good and everything remained stable. At least my reading of the scans, anyways. But they give, you don't have to you don't have to be that technically smart to read them where you just skip to the conclusions. If you go to the middle, there's all kinds of mumbo jumbo that makes reading that. I wish McLaughlin wrote those radiology scan reports. But thank you, Comfort and Joy. Francesca baked Turkey Day Eve chat trolls. Heather says you need a nexus between the evidence in the house, between Karen. So Heather is a trained lawyer. You need a nexus between the evidence in the house, between Karen's admissions and the proximity of John's body to the roadway. There was no nexus. So basically because nobody had seen John in the house. But the potential nexus, Heather, could have been the glass, right? Could they have said there was a cocktail glass here, so we need to search to see if there are similar glasses in the house? I don't know. So, all right, since somebody's bringing it up, we'll talk about it. It's ridiculous that this stuff is even out there. There was a high school party in Canton, I don't know, a week or two ago, and there were high school kids there. It was at a house that was under construction. Extensive damage was done by at least one person who got drunk and was going on a tear. There were a lot of people at this party. I've heard of 70, I've heard 100. And, it's unfortunate that what happened, but it has nothing to do with the case here. There's no linking of it to police corruption or any other kind of corruption in that city. That was not covered up. That's why you're hearing about it. You can't report the papers, or the police can't report the names of these kids legally because they're underage. And the overwhelming majority of the kids wouldn't have done anything wrong. Listen, maybe some of you know what it's like to go to a high school party. You shouldn't be there, but we've all done it, right? We go to a party where there's alcohol. I went to parties in high school where I wasn't able to drink because it's not like in college where there's a keg there. Most of these parties where each one person was on their own, or each group, because you're going with friends, is on their own to find their own alcohol. Well, that's not easy to do when you're 17. And if you can't, when you get to the party, unless somebody gives you a beer, you're not going to be able to drink. So I was at parties like that where didn't drink, not because I was being goody-goody, but because I couldn't get access to a drink. And, I didn't know much about drinking back then. But and there were some parties I was at where I was able to drink. But I was never at a party where they did that kind of destruction. But I'm also not surprised either, because I know how kids that aren't used to drinking do crazy shit. And it really only takes one or two people to do something like that. And then everybody else gets in trouble. And that's the way it is. But none of it has any bearing on the Karen Read case. It's something that goes on in towns. And this is what I say. You got to really start doing a lot of self-reflecting. Are you so eager to buy into this conspiracy theory that you're going to destroy kids' lives without trying to get to the truth, or without even trying to weigh things or consider things in any kind of an even-tempered type of way? Instead, you're like, there it is. And you just want to destroy them. That's irresponsible. That's irresponsible. Would you want that to happen to your daughter or son who just went to a party? I don't think I know any kids that never went to a party. So anybody that went to a party, that could have happened that. But you're going to, people are going to jump all over that. because they're a mob. I'm sorry. That's what it is. That's why I am trying to stand against the mob, standing against the mob. That is mob-like behavior. All right, skipping to the end of the comments. Let's see. So, as someone who used to be a bar owner and was in the bar business for a long time, this is the busiest night of the year in the bar industry. This is, and the bar I owned and all the bars that I worked at were on the parade route for St. Patrick's Day parade. That's a crazy day too. So yeah, I guess maybe overall that's a busier night, but this is a busier day, long day, but this is really the busiest night. It's busier even than St. Patrick's Day usually. Because this is a night when people all come home from wherever they've moved to, and they come back to the area, and so I'm talking younger people primarily in their 20s, and they want to go out and meet the people that they haven't seen because they've moved somewhere else. And so it's a busy night in the bars. Troll on X asked me a question I couldn't answer about Jen's phone showing movements the same time as John's in the morning. No way. John's phone stopped moving at 12:32 and 16 seconds, and it never moved again until it was picked up at the crime scene sometime around 6:15. And so no way. When John's phone stopped moving at 12:32 and 16 seconds, Jen McCabe was inside the house. So you got to be careful what you see on the internet. There's all kinds of weird stuff on the internet. Yeah, no. So it would be great to get a Pulitzer, but I'm not actually writing for any journal, and so no, I will never get a Pulitzer. But it would just be cool to have a Pulitzer prize-winning author come on the show. That would be cool, but I don't even think that's very likely. And look, there have been other people involved with digging into this, and most importantly, Kate Peter, and because Kate Peter early on when Turtle Boy released his article knew just based on Turtle Boy's reputation that it was probably bullshit. So she went into Canton and did a lot of great investigative work, meeting all of the witnesses and meeting the families. That's not something I could have done. And so, she deserves all the credit for that. And Gretchen Voss unfortunately, she's only done one article and made no appearances. But her article from September of 2023 was really still the high point of media coverage in this case. And she spent a lot of time with Turtle Boy and with Karen, but also got down to ground zero and talked to people like Tom Beatty. She, I think, talked to Scanlon on the phone. She describes him as a gruff voice guy, unless she talked to his lawyer, I forget. But that was really a balanced, well-written article. Gretchen Voss, and she's attacked mercilessly by the mob just for doing a both sides kind of article that tried to get to the bottom. That's why. So for people to say there's no mob, no, dude, wake up. All right. That crowd outside that courthouse not only booed people like the O'Keefe family just because they didn't buy into the conspiracy, they were merciless to Gretchen Voss just because she actually did legitimate reporting and tried to get to the truth and did get about as close as anybody could at that time. And for that crowd tortured her every day as she walked into court. John DePietro would tell me about that they were just merciless with her. Why? Because she's a reporter trying to cover it? No, that's a mob. Only a mob does that. Only a mob does that. Only a mob. So I'm not saying that everybody out there protesting did that, but that's what a mob did. And the people that are within that stayed silent. So Hot Mess, welcome, and she says, "Thanks, y'all. Physical full-time job." Yeah, this is all going to see. I've got A to Z on this. This is going to come out in the book, though. I mean, many of us here have gone over through this. Play new videos. Not sure what you got, but many of the people involved in this have been following this for a long time, and we covered every day of the trial. We've read every document. So, Kevin, play the new videos. What new videos are you talking about, Lorena? I'm not sure what new videos you mean. Phelps is not coming on the show. Phelps does not like YouTube. He had said he was going to come on the show, but no, Phelps is not coming on the show. Just looking to see what new videos. Is there some new videos that we're talking about here that you guys want me to play? So I don't know. I'll play them if you email them to me, Facebook them to me. I'm a little surprised that Matt Valentinus didn't understand who he was getting into bed with, but now he knows. So, at the end of the day, they did the right thing. I think they would have done a lot. It would have been a lot more lucrative to them to go in the direction of grifting on the conspiracy. But at the end of the day, they took the path of integrity. And I'm not saying, I don't know. I have no idea how the series concludes, the podcast, but it's clear they're going down the path of debunking things that Aiden believes, but they were disproved in the trial. So one of the ways to look at this is, you got The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. And unfortunately, there was a Part 3. Well, we had the trial Part 1 and the trial Part 2. In the trial Part 1, Adam Lally did do a very good job of debunking the conspiracy theory, and there's no evidence that anybody on that jury believed it. Definitely 9 of them outright dismissed it. But he didn't do a good job of proving how John died in a way beyond a reasonable doubt. The state, Lally, with the limited resources, put a lot of effort into debunking the conspiracy, and he succeeded at that. But it didn't leave him enough time to really make the state's case. You got to do that. Well, now we have someone that can build on that, someone that seems to have more experience, but he certainly, from all indications, Hank Brennan is a great lawyer. But even if he wasn't, it's really just a matter of finishing and building and learning from the first trial. But again, all indications are he is an extremely competent, dedicated lawyer that's not going to leave any stone unturned. So, but he's not flamboyant. He's not, which is great. He's not the prosecution's version of Alan Jackson. He's in some ways refreshingly like Lally in that he's just going to go out there and I'm just going to present you the facts and do the job. And that's what we want. That's what a jury wants. A jury does not, especially they don't want that from, I don't think the jury reacted well at all to the stunts by the defense. I think the defense failed Karen Reed, to tell you the truth. They went too far and trying to push an absurd theory and trying to challenge witnesses that came across to the jurors as just regular people. And that was a bad idea. The reason the jury presumably couldn't come up with a decision was because the state didn't make its case, which is not the same thing as saying the defense had much to do with that. Just reading the comments. Thomas Fleming, are you still here? Are you into your ice cream yet? Everybody shout Thomas Fleming's name all at once to see if he's here. All right. He's still here, man. I think Kate's been through a lot of bullshit with this, but I think it's probably soon ending because it really was all bullshit. Sorry about the silence. I'm just reading the comments. You guys don't really need me. Pumpkin pie with whipped cream. And I'm assuming that Diane made that. So you're a lucky man. And your wife's a great cook too. But I know Diane does the Thanksgiving stuff. Let me just look at my phone and see if anything else interesting happened that you guys need to know about. I had turned a so based on the good worker Fiona, and I'm not going to say anything too specifically here, but we're looking into Dag Nabbit, which is an account that's very active on Twitter, and seeing who that really is. And we have some interesting suspicions about who it might be. And if it turns out to be true, it's going to be really, really interesting. Just if she's still up, saying hi to my very good and one of my best friends, Dina McKinnon, down in Florida. Not sure if you're up, Dina. Happy Thanksgiving to you too, down there. I don't know if you're going to your parents' house in Georgia. Thank you, Kerry. Yeah. Hi, Maui. Good to see you. Hi, Steph. Good to see you too. So let's close out with what I was talking about at the beginning. We are all the people that I work with, and a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. We're trying to make sure that John gets justice and the witnesses who are being falsely persecuted. We're trying to adhere to standards of fairness and how we do it. When dealing with people on the other side, we're trying to be generous. When it comes to any particular piece of evidence that comes across in the case. We're trying to look at it at a both sides kind of ways. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that hopefully someday I'll be able to tell you about. But would we rest assured that all we want is fairness to everybody involved. There's nothing nefarious going on. I'm not part of some secret cabal with the state police. Still to this day, I've had no communication with the state police. So if you're out there on the state police and you're thinking about giving me a call, maybe it's best that you don't, so I can continue to say that. But I'm sure they're not. After this case is over, maybe if you got some idea for another true crime thing that you want us to talk about, we can do that. The jurors agreed generally on guilt for manslaughter. We're told 9 of them. But in terms of the lesser included, I'm not sure the breakdown on that. Yeah, 9-3. Yeah. So everybody have a good Thanksgiving. Enjoy some football. Enjoy getting fat a little bit. Have some drinks if that's okay, if that's something you do. Enjoy your family. If you get to see your friends too, enjoy them. And if your family's driving you crazy, just remember that's part of a Thanksgiving tradition too. Part of loving someone is learning how to still love them when they're annoying you. That's one of the highest thresholds. That's one of the highest proofs of love. So just be grateful you have them, and apply that generosity to everybody else in this case, as where it's applicable, where you can. We're all human beings. We all make mistakes, and let's just try to be forgiving of ourselves and forgiving of them where we can. All right, guys, good night, and we'll see everybody soon.